rolling.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hello everybody, I'm Jesse Pringle, and today I'm going to be giving a presentation on Hyperdyne Global Solutions. Okay. No.
Sorry.
We at Hyperdyne Global Solutions provide supplementary intelligence and acquisition assets tasked with tracking and profiling individuals of interest to prospective clients. Unlike government entities, we have the availability to operate within foreign governments and foreign areas with our international instance because we are a private military corporation and not, in fact, a government entity. Next slide, please. Our mission statement is to derive decisive, actionable intelligence to an ever-changing world. Decisive, actionable intelligence means intelligence that is in real time, real place, with information that is useful to the individual at that time, as compared to delayed intelligence, which you get from maybe a satellite feed that needs to be processed by somebody first and then disseminated into the field. Next slide. Vision statement. To deliver real-time and accurate intelligence prediction utilizing domestic and foreign assets. Next slide.
Whoop, slow down. Back to it.
Overview. We specialize in HUMIT, which is intelligence gathering by human assets, and OSIT, which is open source intelligence gathering. We have the most up-to-date and trained operatives. We utilize cutting-edge technology for mapping pattern of life and lifestyle analysis, and as well as predictive analysis and data mining to get specific data points on the individual targets that we are out there referencing. What that means for you guys is we can have eyes on the ground, figure out where they're going, what they're doing, what they've done, and what they're about to do. We can operate as a fire and forget weapon system on government-sanctioned targets, which means if it is a government-sanctioned operation against, say, a paramilitary organization, we do have the ability to go lethal. All our assets are constantly trained in subject matter experts in the particular fields, which means if we put somebody on the ground, they're not going to cause incidents by not knowing the specifics of the cultures that they're interacting in, and they know how to blend in seamlessly into the environments. Next. What we can do for you: hostage negotiation, conflict mitigation, private investigation, covert surveillance, personal security, and threat analysis consulting. And for government, we can do private military services. And then on the civilian side, we can also do contract for corporate espionage, and as well as in foreign nations, we can do personal security detachments, which are protective details for HVTs, high-value targets in foreign nations. Next slide. Why us? We're tactically sound and proficient. We use quality and highly trained assets. We're dependable, reliable, and dedicated. We have a small footprint. What a small footprint is big private military corporations need a lot of overhead. They need their own private vehicles, they need their own drones, they need their own surveillance, they need basically eyes in the sky. We can be the actual people on the ground with a low team of around 6 to 7 people actually doing the surveillance so as not to bring up the costs and stuff for the individuals that are contracting us. We are a fire and forget self-contained, non-kinetic, rapid deployment weapon systems with the ability to integrate into the local population undetected. The fire and forget means with conventional military or government contractors, you need to continually monitor them in the field. You need to get feedback and receive information and status updates to figure out what's going on. As a fire and forget, we are a self-contained unit, which means we do all the processing, all the information, and all the quoting, and all the target tracking ourselves, and we report to you when the final product is delivered. So you can have the confidence to know that your stuff's getting done without having to continually micromanage. All our field assets have special operations experience. Next slide, please. The company makeup: Jesse Pringle, which is me. I'm a psychological operations operator, protective service detachment team member, infantryman and javelin gunner, And I'm specialized in defense operations for forward operation bases in domestic and foreign countries. My CMO is Sergeant First Class Palomito. He's an intelligence analyst, a protective service team member, and he runs a COIS, which is a company level intelligence management, which is in the military, it's instead of having to have a brigade intelligence unit, he can have a company level which gives you the real-time, real data for your units instead of getting the big-time map information for your whole area, which doesn't give specifics onto the areas that you're working in. Next slide, please. Our CFO is Amy Baffert, which is my cousin. She's a CPA, she has a BS and an MS, and she's also a paralegal. Our human relations is Sergeant Powell. He's a civil affairs psychological operations team lead. He's a passive intelligence investigator and expert marksman. The civil affairs ability gives him cultural knowledge about the specific areas that he's operating in, and he has ties with government entities to be able to get the necessities taken care of, like for sweat analysis, which is sewer, water, trash, and to take care of and bring up the local infrastructures if that's a necessity that's being tasked to us. The world remains a dangerous place full of authoritarian regimes, terrorist organizations, and criminal interests whose combined influence extends to the realm of human suffering. They foster an environment of extremism and a drive to acquire asymmetric capabilities and weapons of mass destruction. The threats to peace and stability are numerous, complex, and oftentimes linked and sometimes aggravated by natural disaster. This is an excerpt from the Army Special Forces Handbook, Field Manual 3-05. All our employees and field assets are contracted and recruited from special operations qualified individuals and other government institutions. Pricing is straightforward. Operations where there is no physical threat to the assets is a standard flat rate of $750 for domestic operations and operations that last under 5 hours. So by domestic, that means American operations in American territories. Operations on a non-specified time scale are billable for $25,000 up to 2 weeks. So even if our assets are working 24 hours a day for 2 weeks, it still comes to the same price. And if that's for domestic or foreign, but if it's in a foreign area with indirect fire or imminent danger, we negotiate that by case basis. Next slide. This is how private military corporations are currently being utilized by civilians, specifically humanitarian or not NGOs and non-government organizations around the world. The red is the areas that we specifically specialize in: security management and consulting, risk assessment and threat analysis, and information services. The others we can do, but we more likely like to contract those out to bigger private military corporations, so that way you guys can have an actual larger amount of feet on the ground. For if you're running a security detail where you need to control a fob, you're going to need close to 200 and 300 individuals patrolling that. Whereas if you want a threat analysis and statistic analysis and pattern of life mapping and data mining and all that stuff on individuals, you need a task team that can disappear into the environment and not make a big scene.
Could you read across the top for me?
Yes. Contracted security services used by humanitarians, NGOs, percent of organizations contracted from international PSPs.
And what's the PSP?
Private security. Percent of organizations conducting from local PSPs. In general terms, they're going to hire more locally if they're going to be controlling the FOB, but they want American assets if they're going to be working on areas of strategic interest, because they can't really trust the local population or we wouldn't be there. Next slide. The PMC industry is now worth over $100 billion a year. Private corporations make up 29% of the workforce in the United States intelligence community at a cost equivalent 49% of their personal budgets. So even though we make up a small percent, we are highly trained and we are highly paid, and we make up half the budget, which is over $100 billion a year. That's set for analysis in the United States, and private military corporations receive half of that. We're contracted with Backers McKinsey, which is an international law firm, so that they can take care of all international needs, because we're going to be operating in foreign countries. I'm not going to read that whole spiel, that's their actual logos, but I'll let you guys take a minute to read it if you'd like. And with our in-house legal team, you are guaranteed a safe and effective way to get actionable intelligence. We use the utmost discretion and security handling your cases. All our assets are bound by a 100% ironclad confidentiality agreement and a non-compete agreement. We are dedicated to meeting the needs and being the eyes and ears on the ground. Next slide, please. Before I go over this, I'm going to give you our competitive advantage. We have the ability to help U.S. and foreign nations construct a timely and relevant response to national strategic interests. We at Hyperdyne Global Solutions believe that the fight against tyranny, humans are better than hardware, and an eye on the ground is better than an eye in the sky. This philosophy in mind, we chose quality over quantity in our choice of assets, which gives us a low overhead. We can pass the savings on to you, and you get the most bang for your buck. We have the best trained assets, the most up-to-date intelligence analysts, all without having to have a large footprint in your area of operations. This is the basics of the startup costs. The costs are going to be a little bit higher because of the type of organization this is. The only thing that's not super high is the lease, which we can get because we're going to be operating in America to start with, and our operatives are going to be operating out of foreign places, but they don't necessarily need a residence except for maybe safe houses and things of that nature.
And what's the timeline for your startup costs? You're looking at a year here, you're looking at 6 months?
I'm looking about a year and a half, because you need to get extensive background investigations on everybody that's attached to this, because you are working with government organizations and sensitive information.
Okay. So in your next time you do this, be sure you put your time period.
Okay. Leasing or licensing, I'm guessing is going to be around $5,000. Looking at for just basic domestic licenses for the kind of business that we do. We need permits, security permits. We need concealed weapons permits. We need travel visas, travel vouchers. Say that again?
They're going to probably be required. But that's okay. This isn't.
Well, for our miscellaneous and unseen costs, we put a $25,000 cap on there, because seeing as this is intelligence, you never know exactly what's going on, and you can only do your best to predict it. And